KeAndre Lambert-Smith, he has transferred out of Penn State. I know this was something that when I was posting about it on Twitter, a lot of people were asking about. It was a pretty big news. Obviously, Penn State's leading receiver last year had 600 some yards. Sorry, I don't have the exact number. It was nearly 700. I know that. Julian Fleming, of course, has come into Penn State. So there are rumors, has Julian Fleming passed KeAndre Lambert-Smith up? And I kind of said, doesn't really make sense. You play more than one wide receiver. It's not like quarterbacks. So, obviously, even if Julian was going to be doing more of that, it would still make sense he would be there. But Vince, Andrew, one of you guys, just give me kind of your thoughts on what happened with KeAndre Lambert-Smith. And do you think there's any solid story here, or is this kind of something that everybody's still kind of asking about what went on?
Yeah. So just to, quickly recap, some of the sequences of events. So shortly before the spring game, there were some rumblings that KeAndre was interested in possibly entering the portal, and then he was absent from the blue-white game, both on the sidelines and on the field. And then just yesterday, I believe, he confirmed that he did enter the portal. So initial thoughts from this, it's definitely, a bummer, just from the standpoint that he was the number one receiver last year in terms of production, but also just a guy who has been around the program for a while, seemingly a really great dude, really positive influence on the rest of the group. Just a guy who has been with the program now through a couple of coordinators, a couple of wide receivers coaches. So definitely seemed to be, rolling with the punches pretty well from that aspect. So not really sure what those conversations were like with new offensive coordinator Kotelnicki, with Franklin, and possibly with Fleming, coming in as the new wide receiver, kind of that new veteran presence there in the wide receiver group. So another team is going to be getting a great wide receiver, definitely a plug and play number two receiver type of guy. So it'll be interesting to see where he lands, but it's going to be all eyes on the wide receiver group again this year for Penn State. So Vince, you got anything else on that?
Yeah, this was definitely a shocking move on my part. Hearing this, he was the number one wide receiver last year, and really the kind of the favorite, along with Julian Fleming, to be that first guy and be the guy. And when you wrap things through your head, you're trying to think, why is this happening? We can only speculate. Coach Franklin always keeps internal matters internal. He doesn't really share too much about the players or stuff within the locker room. Some might think it's NIL money and he's trying to get a better deal. I find that very unlikely. I don't think there's that many schools that are going to provide more money for him than Penn State. As a matter of fact, Penn State really is one of those teams that prefers not to use the portal, using it very minimally. So that was one reason why it was shocking. Some other things you can really speculate on. Maybe Julian Fleming was in the system and he wasn't happy with his role. Maybe he wasn't happy with the wide receiver coach switch with Marquise Haggins from Taylor Stubblefield from 2 seasons ago when they won the Rose Bowl. Maybe he's not getting along with Kotelnicki. These are all things we can only speculate on. He is also a graduating after this semester, so maybe he wants to pursue something educationally as well. So at the end of the day, we really don't know. And the fact that he was really only the main proven guy that was consistently able to create separation and get open definitely raises some level of concern for Penn State along the perimeter.
Yeah, my first thought went Kotelnicki as well. The possibility of, is he just unhappy with the offense, or maybe is Kotelnicki not using him in a way that he likes? I didn't even think about NIL because, you kind of hear about schools who NIL isn't going so well, and I've not heard anything about that from Penn State. I've not heard that it's the best NIL in the world, but I've heard that, I've not heard anything bad, which says to me that it's reliable and players are getting paid what they were promised. And I mean, that's kind of what you want right now in the NIL era, right? You really don't want there to be any news about your NIL. You want it to be quiet and know the players are getting paid. So Zack, did you have any thoughts on KeAndre Lambert-Smith and what possibly might have happened here?
I appreciated the thought about maybe disagreement with the wide receiver coach or Kotelnicki at offensive coordinator. My other question, I'd be curious to hear Andrew and Vince, your guys' thoughts, but do you think there might be maybe some, not disagreement, but maybe lack of cohesion with Drew Aller?
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly a possibility. Because on the whole, the wide receiver group last year was underwhelming. We could say the production really wasn't there. There were always conversations and comments, even from Franklin himself, saying, we need other guys to step up. Like, guys need to start making plays, and all on overall, like this group needs to step up their game. And part of that also definitely was quarterback play. I mean, Drew was fine, but he didn't light the world on fire. And there were plenty of ups and downs. Across all quarterbacks in the Big Ten, he had a pretty high percentage of uncatchable balls. When you compare, the starting quarterbacks across all the different teams. So that definitely could have played a part in it as well. By all accounts, from what we've heard through spring practice, things have been going very well in that aspect. Things are progressing smoothly with Kotelnicki's new offense being installed into the system. So maybe though things weren't happening at a quick enough pace for Lambert's liking. So I think that definitely could be playing a part in it. I think too, another thing that I also thought was just like similar to other players in the portals stories, he's just a guy who's like been in one program for so long that maybe he just wanted a fresh start. Maybe kind of similar to Fleming in a way. I mean, Fleming, his situation is so unique because he was playing behind arguably generational wide receivers. It's really hard to be the guy when you have to play behind Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, among some others. But, sometimes you just want a fresh start. You want a new look and just a new place to put some stuff on film that guys are going to like in the NFL. So I thought that had something to do with it as well. But I think there's probably some credence to that. Whether or not we're actually going to get the answer to that is pretty unlikely, but we can speculate, certainly.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In terms of Drew and not enjoying playing with Drew, there were definitely a couple of throws where he made KeAndre look very good last year. And, you can think about Higgins, but if that was the case, why would he not just enter the portal after conclusion of the season? Now, it could be he just wanted to finish his Penn State degree and then get out. That's always a possibility. But at the end of the day, we're really not going to know, and he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, I think KeAndre Lambert-Smith, I don't think this was a situation like Keon Coleman with Peyton Thorne or anything like that last year. It seemed like, he was just kind of quietly leaving. And I would say that, typically when these guys get upset about something, they kind of make it known. Now, James Franklin not really talking about it much makes me think maybe there was something there, but you're exactly right, Andrew. We really don't have any answers here. It's just kind of all speculation at this point. And I don't know if we'll ever get an answer unless KeAndre Lambert-Smith comes out himself and says something. So obviously the thought here is the future. We're going to talk about the spring game and some of the guys we saw on it here in a minute, but I mean, just at the wide receiver position in general, Andrew, Julian Fleming's coming in this year, so that's good news, but you have some other guys here on the roster that they're going to be catching balls for the first time this season. Malik Mija, I forget I don't know how to say his name, but Malik Mija, he's also not doing super well, or not doing super well because he's in the transfer portal. Sorry, my lights went out there for a second. I don't know what went on there, but he's not doing super well right now because he's in the transfer portal. But just what are your thoughts overall with this wide receiver position, Andrew?
Yeah, so I think it's really just going to be a tale of kind of the continuation of last year. Like, guys are going to be asked to step up. I think having Fleming there is going to be a huge help, just in terms of maintaining some level of production there. I mean, when you look at Fleming's career up to now, he probably has more catches and more yards than probably everybody else in the wide receiver group combined. So that's a level of experience and a level of veteran status that you can lean on and Drew can look to. But yeah, I mean, there's still so much talent when you look at this group compared to, what their prospects were coming out of high school. You have guys like Harrison Wallace, who's dealt with some injury concerns. You have Caden Saunders, who was touted as being kind of that speedy slot receiver, a guy who can really break a game open. And there's Omari Evans, and there's a bunch of other names in there that were kind of part of this collective mix that Franklin, without being super on the nose, kind of said, like, someone needs to be wide receiver 2 out of this group. And I mean, they had Dante Cephas last year, the highly, highly touted transfer from Kent State. That never materialized the way that they wanted it to. And so they were just kind of looking for answers for anybody who was willing to step up and take it. So I think it's really just going to be a matter of like someone needs to step up and make those plays. I mean, the transfer portal is not just getting immediately filled right now. I mean, we're only like 1 day into it, but there's not going to be a ton of new wide receivers coming through the transfer portal now at this point in the offseason. So they need the guys who are in the room right now to have the drive to develop themselves and make sure that they make their presence felt in this new Kotelnicki offense.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think those are some really good. I think those are some really good points. Guys, I'm looking at to kind of fill the role of KeAndre Lambert-Smith. You saw it on the game on Saturday. Tight ends. I think you're going to see the tight ends utilized more. Me personally, I would like to see Penn State play a lot of 2 tight end sets with Tyler Warren and Khalil Jenkins. Those are 2 of their best players in terms of pass catching options. So I'd really like to see them on the field more. I'd really like to see Penn State run the ball more and commit to the run more, almost like Michigan did last year with the defense they had last year. And, the running attack that they had, for some reason, they got away from that last year. And it was, both Andrew and I were kind of scratching our heads. So those are some ways I expect Penn State to handle it. Some other guys I expect to step up for wide receivers are Caden Saunders, Mari Evans, and Trey Wallace. All 3 of those guys, they're smaller type wide receivers, and they're definitely speed guys. So they're guys that are going to really try to stretch the offense. 2 years ago in the blue-white game, Mari Evans really stood out. I thought he was going to have a bigger season last year. Turned out to be a so-so season. So they're definitely going to be relying on that speed. And Drew is really going to have to connect on those deep balls when he takes those shots, because last year, Penn State just didn't take those shots. Drew was, very good at taking care of the football, but he was avoiding those smaller window throws. So he was more so managing the game. So that's going to be really important. They have to hit on those deep throws, utilize the tight ends. And lastly, we didn't really get to see the 2 of them together. Julian Fleming was playing on the blue team this past weekend. So my question for you guys is, being Ohio State guys, do you think Julian Fleming can assume the role of a number 1 receiver and really stand out at Penn State?
Go ahead, Zach.
Oh, that's a hard question.
That's why I give it to you first.
Yeah. I'm not sure he can be a number 1. I think which is why I think KeAndre Lambert-Smith leaving. I didn't think KeAndre Lambert-Smith was a solid number 1 either. I thought both would be good number 2s, but if you had both of them together, I thought that could at least take some pressure off of each other. I think what I love about him is his physicality, and I thought he became a great blocker at the end of his career. And I just don't know how much of that is how much of his maybe lack of production. Part of it was certainly you had Marv, you had Emeka, you had Olave and Garrett Wilson. But I think part of it was the injuries. And so how much of his limitation was because he's been injured? He's dealing with shoulder injuries. From all accounts, he was a great teammate, great presence in the locker room. And so I hesitate to fully say no, because I think if he commits himself, and I think if he plays like he did back in his Southern Columbia days, right, and he can really get back to 100%, I think that there's a possibility. But I think from what he's shown to this point, I think really solid number 2 may be a stretch to be a number 1.
Yeah, I think Julian Fleming is a good player. I think that he's a very good team player, which I appreciate about him. And I think that will bring a lot of good things to this wide receiver room that needs kind of some leadership, it seems like, in the room. So that's going to be an excellent piece there. Do I think that he's going to be your traditional, wide receiver that you're going to be able to go to whenever you're in a pinch and kind of bail you out? Unfortunately not. I just don't think he's that kind of player. I think that he gets good separation, not great. But at the end of the day, I think he's a very willing blocker. And if he just learns how to block a little bit better, because some of the angles he took last year were were the issues.
Yeah.
It wasn't the issue of, I mean, Ohio State kind of has an issue with wide receivers not always wanting to block. That wasn't the case with Julian Fleming. He wants to get in there. He wants to hit the guy, but sometimes he doesn't always take the right angle. So I completely agree with what you guys are saying about, or I think you said, Vince, with like the running game and, making that better, especially if you're going to run to Julian Fleming's side. He's going to take out a cornerback for you as long as he knows how to block better and take those angles the right way. And so you could really see the running game flourish this year. And although Drew Lauer might not have that, bail you out wide receiver, you could still find a wide receiver that's able to do the right things, do the simple things, and provide him a target most of the time. So that's kind of where I go with it.
I was just gonna one thing I get to cover the area that Julian Fleming came from in high school during the fall, and I think one thing that has been very apparent is whenever Southern Columbia plays, they are just bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else. So I think a lot of the recruiting hype with Julian Fleming, he was just bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else that he played against. And even in a running offense, like he just piled up yards and touchdowns. I mean, I think he broke all the state records. And now now he's playing in a conference with guys who are as strong and as big and as fast. But because of the disparity, I think that's what got him such a high ranking when he was coming out. And I really, the guy who I think he could be, and this is from an Ohio State perspective, but almost like, I think he could be like an Evan Spencer type receiver where team guy, leadership, I think, really puts in the effort to block, just needs to do a little bit better. But I just don't know. Yeah, I just don't know if he can be the guy, the true number one.